Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly, and we're back with another Texas Hill Country Fishing Report with Greg Welander of Upstream on the Fly. How you doing, Greg?
Well, hi, Marvin. I'm doing awesome. It's my favorite time of year. I always say there are not enough days in the month of October.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I'm a big fall trout fishing fan.
Yeah, well, down here in Texas, we're chasing the bass, and our temperatures have been running in the 80s for daytime highs, and our overnight lows have been in the 50s. So it's starting to cool the water. The bass start to know it's winter's coming up. And we've had no rain for the last 2 weeks, and we've got no rain in the forecast for 7 days. So that means everything's coming together. Water clarity, weather's perfect just to be outside, and the fish are chewing. We just had a full moon back on October 1st, so I'm glad that's out of the way. Sometimes it affects the bite, but fish still have to eat. But at least now we're beyond the bright nights because we've had no cloud cover. It's been sunny, and things are only going to get better as we get into October. So today we're going to visit about the lower Colorado, east of Austin, and the Llano, and of course our highland lakes, such as Lake Travis. So the Loco, as we call it, just east of Austin, downstream of Austin, the water clarity has been great as a result of not having rain and runoff, and the dam release has not been bad. It's been one little peak during the day, but the water flow has been spot on, and it's topwater time. I thoroughly enjoy fishing topwater and having my customers fish topwater. So it's that time of year where they're also eating crawfish and shad. So as we start to get those longer cold snaps, which we have not had yet, the crawfish bite really starts to turn on as well. So let's go out west to the Llano River. We've been running about 80 CFS, maybe up to 90 from Mason all the way down to Llano, and that's good. Those are good numbers. It's not a huge amount of water, but it's got a good flow to it. So there's plenty of oxygen in the water, and the Guadalupe bass population is incredible out on the Llano, and they're still keying into the river minnows. And we'll talk a bit about that here in a few minutes about tips and techniques. But let's go up on the Highland Lakes. And, Lake Travis is one of the clearest of the reservoirs out of our Highland Lakes, and the fish they're up shallow now and they're eating. So school is back in session, I guess you'd say, in one form or the other. Hunting started. We've got various dove season, and we've got bow season started, and a lot of your deer hunters are getting ready for the November 1st opener. So what I mean there is, traffic, boat traffic is down on the lakes and even down at the Texas coast. So people are doing more things than just fishing. So it reduces the number of people out on the water, which is awesome. Travis has been fishing well for topwater and streamers later in the day. So this time of year, the bass are kind of chasing the shad. They're moving shad a lot, and the bass have come out of their deep water haunts, so they're all up shallow, making it ideal for a fly fisherman. So as we get into the month of October, the bass will start pushing that shad back farther in the creek channels, going back into the coves. But as of right now, over the last couple of weeks, the fish are all out towards the main lake, but they're all along the rocky shorelines. So, I'm going to say the next 3 weeks from now is some of the best bass fishing on Lake Travis is in regards to quantity of fish. It's always fun to catch a lot of fish. And some of the fish have been pushing 3 to 4 pounds. So it's a great time to be outside.
Yeah, absolutely. So how does all that translate into kind of tips and techniques?
Yeah. So the lower Colorado River, the streamers, anything that's going to be shad bait fish driven, whether it's, micro game changers is one of my favorites. A Murdich minnow, fished on a sinking line. I'll generally fish that on an intermediate line if I'm not getting them up the top. But, clouser minnows, they're not specific. If it's chartreuse white, gray white, olive white, I recommend the larger sizes, like a size 2, because the shad are, we're at the end of the growing season for shad, and you're not looking at as small of a shad. They're a little bit bigger. So you're trying to match the hatch. So think about a 3-inch long shad. So kind of go with a size 2, and big deceivers, all your color combos, white, chartreuse white, gray white, and even don't be afraid to try pink. Pink or as the bass guys back in the BASS tour would call it bubble gum. Okay. I'll type a bass candies in pink at this time of year, especially when the water clarity is better. And that's what it is right now. With the cooler temperatures, and no runoff from the rains, the water just clears up ideal for the fly rotter. But also crayfish patterns. So some of the biggest crayfish I've ever seen in my life are on the lower Colorado River. So you can't go too big with a crayfish pattern, except the ability to cast the fly. And, your bright oranges with a little bit of brown or black mixed in. And once again, I tie up a lot of bass candies, and if you've never tied a bass candy, I'm sure there's a recipe out online, but basically what a bass candy is, it's a zonker strip around 4 inches long, tied on a stinger type of hook. I like to use a stinger hook, and you've got a few rubber legs coming out the back, and maybe twice as many, like 4, 6 rubber legs up front, with a dumbbell eye for weight. And I'm tying it on a white gap stinger hook, like a Gamakatsu D10S stinger. And I'm using a larger size, like a 1 or a 1/0. And of course, I'm having my clients throw that on an 8 weight, since it is a fairly large fly. But on a smaller pattern, a near enough crayfish in size 4 definitely gets it done. And that way you can maybe jump down to 6 weight. And bright orange this time of year, okay? Your crayfish population on the lower Colorado are going to be in your orange flavors, okay? So stay away from olive and brown. Go with orange. But the month of October is awesome for topwater. So any topwater popper, in your larger sizes, okay? Don't be going out on the Colorado with, size 8s or some of the smaller sizes. You want to throw some of the biggest poppers that are on the market, or the biggest ones that you tie. And deer hair sliders is another good fly. But I was talking about the Murdich minnow, as a streamer, which I'll fish on an intermediate line. But at this time of year, I'll fish a Murdich minnow, or my clients will, of course, be fishing the Murdich minnow on a floating line. And that's kind of how, one of my clients had opened my eyes to the Murdich minnow several years ago, and he was fishing it on a floating line, and it's just kind of working right below the surface of the water, and it resembles a big shad. And the Guadalupe bass just love it. So this time of year in October, the topwater bite can go all day long. So don't stop fishing until the fish stop responding, and switch off to your streamers. Okay, the Llano River. So once again, on the streamer side of things, it's all been bait fish. The minnow patterns. Just try to replicate your minnows. Chartreuse and white clousers. Natural colors. I'm tying up some clousers in tan over white, and I'm using fox hair. Okay, so it's kind of a tan over white, very natural colored clouser minnow. But topwater, a white boogle bug, like a size, I'm going to say a larger size. So I think you can get like a size 4. Unless you tie your own flies, then you could use a double barrel popper or something. But yeah, anything that's bait fish driven for your topwater bugs, for the Llano River. Now, the Highland Lakes, I was talking about Lake Travis and, all the lakes in the series of the Highland Lakes, fish pretty similar this time of year. So your streamer patterns, you're going to be replicating your shad. So your chartreuse white, olive white, are kind of my favorite colors. And, once again, game changers, clousers, deceivers, they're not real specific. It's more so make that fly resemble, a shad pattern is really what you're looking for. And I'm doing mostly floating lines this time of year. If things get a little slow, I'll pull out a sinking line and maybe put on a crawfish and try to work a little deeper water. But crayfish patterns in orange are also working well up on the rocky shorelines. And I've been seeing fish up in a foot of water, and that's pretty incredible for this time of year, especially Travis. It's such a clear body of water. But they're looking for food. They're eating really good. In the next 3 weeks on Travis will be some of the best fishing all year. So floating line, shad patterns. And then if you want to jump over to topwater, which, I've been catching plenty of fish on topwater, and I'll stay with the topwater as long as the fish are responding. But Lefty's popping bug, it's an older pattern, been around for a long time, but it's a longer, narrower popping bug. Okay, so once again, that's imitating a bait fish pattern, like a shad or something up on top, and they're professionally tied. You can buy them in yellow or chartreuse, but a double barrel popping bug. If you have any of those and just a plain white, put some deer hair out the back and maybe spin a feather on the back or a little dubbing brush, and that's it. Nothing fancy, but they are looking up for shad. But that's it, Marvin. There's the start of fall in the Texas Hill Country.
Well, that sounds super promising, and we've got a question this time around from Bill, and Bill wanted to know, Greg, if it's possible on like a 1 to 2 day trip to target cichlids and Guadalupe bass on the same trip.
Yes, it is. Bill, this time of year, everything's eating well as far as, chasing our flies. The cichlid bite will start to slow down, okay, the later we get into the year, okay? So the month of October, cichlid fishing is still strong. It's still good, but you'll see that to start to slow down once we start getting those stronger cold fronts. So I'm going to say cichlid bite is on through the whole month of October, and it's going to be weather dependent as we get into November and December. They start to seek cover, they get down into the deeper rock crevices or the undercut banks. But the Guadalupe bass bite will go on, and it'll go on into December. As long as it's not snowing and the highs are every few days get back up in the 60s and 70s. You bet the Guadalupe bass are definitely responding. But to answer your question, cichlids and guads in the month of October, you bet we can definitely make that happen for you.
Well, that's awesome. And folks, we love questions at the Articulate Fly. And if you send them to us, you can email them to us or send them to us on our Facebook or Instagram or Twitter pages. If we use your question, I'll send you some Articulate Fly swag, and you'll get into a drawing for some cool stuff that Greg's going to put together from some of the brands that he reps at the end of the season. And, Greg, before I let you hop, why don't you let folks know where they can find you so they can book in fish with you?
Well, sure, Marvin. My website, so that's upstreamonthefly.com. And then over on social media, both Instagram and Facebook, and that's going to be Upstream on the Fly.
Well, that's awesome. Well, listen, folks, we're getting ready to get into a really sweet spot for chasing bass in the Texas Hill Country. You owe it to yourself to get out there and catch a few. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Greg.
Tight lines, Marvin.